Welcome to another episode of Sanford Says. My name is Lisa Holder, Communications Officer for the City of Sanford. And today we have two great guests. Tony Raimondo is the Director of Development Services, and Rose Covin is the Code Enforcement Supervisor for the City of Sanford. And today's topic is the Code Enforcement Academy. Something new, a new initiative here, Tony. Welcome to the two of you.
Hey, good morning, Lisa. Good to be here. So yeah, let's talk about the Code Academy.
Code Academy, yes. Now the city's done a Citizens Academy. We've educated our citizens about learning about city government, but we have to think about what about our internal our employees, and our stakeholders here. And this is one of the reasons why you had, I'm assuming, thought up of academy where you can teach your own employees the business of code enforcement.
Yeah. Last year I had the opportunity to go to FACE training. FACE stands for Florida Association of Code Enforcement, and there's 4 levels of training in this at this course. And I went to level 1, and what I recognized from some of our employees is they weren't basically prepared to be there. They had just come into the code enforcement arena kind of blindly, and I wanted to give our young code enforcement officers some very basic training before they went out to another agency to receive the more complex certifications. So I don't know, Rose, since you've been here, how many years have you been here now?
20.
And in 20 years, they've never done a code academy before, have they?
That would be correct, never.
Yeah. And so, Rose and I talked about this a little bit, and we developed this 16-hour curriculum. And it wasn't just code enforcement officers, by the way. We had 5 police officers, we have 4 community service officers, and a couple administrative assistants that sat through this training, as well as the code enforcement officers. Because what our code says, if you didn't know it, is that there's multiple people that can enforce our code. It's not just code enforcement officers. You can have the folks from planning, building, the fire marshal, fire inspectors, police officers. Truthfully, anybody we designate and train as a city employee can go out and enforce the code, but Ms. Covin and her staff, they're the experts. They're the ones who really get into the nitty-gritty of it.
Sure, and I'd like to ask Rose a few questions. So how many code enforcement officers do we have on the City of Sanford staff?
We have 3 right now presently.
3. And so can we just define what the role of a code enforcement officer does before we talk a little bit more about the academy? What is the basic
The
responsibility?
very first rule is to educate the public. That is our main topic, our main goal, is to educate the public, not to write citations. That'll come after education is first.
Right, because if you're more aware and you know what you shouldn't do, then you would not need to get cited. Right? I would think so. That's probably the number one goal, as you said.
Well, as Tony stated earlier, that's what the training was about, was to educate the code enforcement officers so they would be educated enough for the public. So that's why we came up with the code enforcement training.
Right, because code enforcement topic goes hand in hand with city government, I would think. It's been around since the dawn of time for city government, because there are reasons why, though, that there are rules set in place, because if there wasn't, then it would be, we'd run amok in us. There'd be no law and order. And
Right.
So there's a reason for it. But also, like you said, the education comes beforehand.
Correct.
So, and then, Tony, the academy, how did that work?
Well, I think you're right. I think cities have a right to regulate themselves. And you said law and order, and that's true. But imagine a city where you have police officers and enforcing the lowest levels of code. I don't know that the police department is the best face for that, and so there has to be something else before that. And that's what Ms. Covin was kind of alluding to, is we see ourselves as ambassadors to the community. We still have an enforcement component. Hopefully, you're going to listen to us. But if you don't, then there's a process by which we seek remedy. That could be a violation. It could be bringing you before a magistrate. And what the Code Academy did was it gave our code enforcement officers, our police officers, and those people who are going to be certified to enforce code a broader perspective of what city government is. It's not just code. So we brought the planning director in to speak and talk about why the planning function is so important. Then we brought the building official in. We brought the building official in to talk about, well, here's the reference, our building code that we have to follow, and here's why. Here's what happens if you don't follow the rules with respect to the building code. Then we brought folks from the fire department in to talk about what they look for when they go into a building, what their life safety issues and life safety plans that they look for. We brought in a person from special events permitting, because our code enforcement officers could have to police those types of events. And then we also did a bunch of very basic things. We talked about citation writing, report writing, courtroom preparation and testimony. And we're going to expand on the program. I think what will happen is we'll probably do this program on a yearly basis, just so that we're all maintaining the same foundation in code enforcement, and then we'll be able to build on that. For example, right now we don't currently have code enforcement officers assigned to nights or weekends where they're operating alone, but we're going to do that. And so I think one of the responsibilities that we're going to have is give them some basic skills to be able to operate independently, interpersonal training, as well as maybe a little bit of defensive tactics. How to, push an angry person away from you and get away and go seek help from the police department or whatever's appropriate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Tony, so it sounds like code enforcement, of course, is part of a big picture and partners with all different departments and what they do on a daily basis. So much work goes into planning and the building official approving permitting and things like that. So when you have the code enforcement coming at, you want to, and I hate to use the word enforce, but all that work that the city has done and the commission has approved policies and ordinances, you have to follow up with that, like I said. And so code enforcement is so important as like the end result of keeping and maintaining all of the hard work that the city has put forth. And so, Tony, I know that how long have you been the Director of Development Services? Because if those listening don't realize or don't know, Tony Raimondo is the retired Deputy Chief of the Sanford Police Department. So it sounds like it's like a nice fit that you are now the Development Services Director.
It's been a nice transition.
How long has it been now?
Officially since June 1st of last year, so I'm coming up on the 1 year mark already. I mean, time flies when you're having fun.
It seems like forever. No.
And it's been really cool experience because I get to learn new stuff. I think, if I had as the Deputy Chief of Police, if I had dug as deeply into code as I have now as the Director of Development Services, I would have been a much better Chief of Police. And that's why when we held the Code Academy, we brought police officers over from the police department, because I want those guys and gals to have a more intimate understanding with code.
Right, so that makes sense. So you knew you had that knowledge of that. Otherwise, it would be operating as we have been.
And I'm very thankful for Ms. Covin. She's she's kind of held my hand along the way, and she showed me the ropes and showed me what the processes of code enforcement are. She's been a great teammate. Yeah,
so Rose, you've been in the code enforcement department or area division for 20 years. Have you? That's a long time.
I originally started with the police department.
Oh, you did?
Yes, I transferred over. So I've been here, I would say, maybe 18 years, maybe.
That's a long time. Still, a lot of institutional knowledge, and I could see that. And you were promoted because Tony, you when you became the director, we blended or partnered with development services and planning and building, and you created one department. Is that correct, or was it?
That actually occurred right before I got here. So that was done. Code enforcement, planning, building, and business tax receipts were all consolidated. And it makes sense because, those departments, they mesh on a daily basis with respect to development review, building, and then, of course, when we get to a code enforcement.
Right. And so you said you have 3 officers?
Yes.
And so they're responsible for different divisions in the city. Is it broken down like in boundaries or something? Is that how that works?
That'll be correct. It goes from 1792, that's where it's split off at, to 25th Street. So each officer is responsible for those 3 areas. Okay. It'll be east, west, and then after 25th Street, it'll be like south of 25th.
I see. And so they are certified? Is that what when you said, was it PACE? Was that the?
FACE.
FACE. Sorry, FACE. So is that something that code enforcement, do they need a certification to be a code enforcement officer for the city, or is that what you are?
Yes, hoping? They have to receive that certification within a year. So each one of them will be going in May, this month, to get their certification.
Through that organization
through
that
that
you mentioned?
organization.
Correct.
Is that a national, is it a Florida standard or is it a national?
FACE is Florida. It's a state
Florida
program.
State program. Okay.
So we started, with the city, right? We started with our Code Academy. We got people basically trained. The next thing that's going to happen is that they're going to go to the Florida State training so that they can expand their knowledge base. And then what'll happen is it'll be over a process of years. We hope to get all of our code enforcement officers certified across the 4 levels.
Right. And you mentioned in the evening having sometime a potential for that, having code enforcement on duty then. Is that typical for a city to have that nighttime officers?
What do you think, Rose? Have you ever seen it?
From time to time, when we go to some of the training, some of them does have a night officer.
Right. And so because I'm sure, what would be the need for a code enforcement officer in the evening time? Because most things, and correct me if I'm wrong, in the daytime, these types of things that people may get citations for, overgrown grass, like things like that, a dilapidated car parked on a driveway that's annoying the neighbors. It's deeper than that, correct?
It is.
That's correct. The nighttime officer really will be regulating like noise ordinance. That'll be one of the very, very, very important ones. We'll
Right.
be regulating. Also, SC3 permits to make sure everyone is following the same rule.
Can you share what that stands for? SC3 permits?
Well, there's sidewalk cafe permits.
Okay. See, acronyms, we use them and we have to spell it out.
Right, right. So when you see, for example, people using our right-of-way, the right-of-way use permits is what they are.
Right.
And if you're going to use the city's right-of-way, there's certain rules you got to follow, right? We want you to be insured, for example. We want to see a diagram of what are you planning on putting in the right-of-way. Is everything going to be ADA compliant, for example?
Right.
So these are the kind of things that Rose's team would be looking at nights that hasn't been done previously because, frankly, our community's changed. It's become kind of a vibrant destination city with this kind of microbrewery identity and restaurants and arts and theater. And with that growth comes problems that, frankly, we just didn't have before. And so we've got to figure out a way to balance the needs of that growth with the safety of our community members.
Right. And when you talk about right-of-way, I know that there are people listening, that's another government term, and you may not know what that is, but stay tuned because we're going to share some information about what a right-of-way is and government lingo so you're aware of what Tony's mentioning because what is that? It's it looks like it could be a sidewalk, right? It could be in front of your house and there's words like easement, and we'll get into that on another topic, but these are the types of things where education, like you said, Rose, is important. We want to educate the public so they understand the ins and outs of government and why you do the things you do, why you would perhaps get a visit from a code enforcement officer. So that's what this is all about. But primarily, this podcast episode was talking about what we're doing internally with our code enforcement team and our development services team, thanks to Tony Raimondo, the director of development services, and this code academy. And so they graduated, so to speak?
They're done. In fact, next commission meeting, May 9th, if anybody would like to be there, there's going to be a proclamation read out for code enforcement appreciation, but we're also going to do presentation of their badges, which is the symbol of their authority. I think it's a very important moment for those young people, and so I would encourage anyone that's in listening distance that can get here to come out and support them.
Okay, so a full-blown graduation. How long was it again? How many weeks was it, or was it?
The basic was 16 hours, and
16
then
hours.
this course that's coming up in May that Rose was alluding to is going to be an additional 40 hours.
Right.
And so typically each follow-on course is also 40 hours with continuing education requirements each year.
Right. And so how's the feedback from your staff? They enjoy it? They liked it? Have you gotten any feedback yet from?
Oh yes, they learned a very lot. About some things they didn't know about building.
Right.
So they was educated on that. Some things they didn't know about planning and zoning. And also, do you want to tell them where you're going to be holding this year on May, where it's going to be, the training?
Oh, yeah, actually, thanks for thinking of that. We're going to host that FACE training. This year,
first time.
University of Central Florida in the past had kind of honchoed that program. So when it transferred to University of South Florida, I reached out to them, and I really felt strongly that after speaking with Rose that we didn't want to lose the energy in the central part of our state with respect to this training. So we had Sanford designated a formal training site. So we're actually going to be hosting that training. It's going to be here in Sanford. We're going to use the utilities training room, and we hope to. We actually have one additional one scheduled after that for just a retake where folks from around the state of Florida can come to our little community and come out here and get certified as code enforcement officers. So I appreciate Rose thinking of that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So I mean, Sanford's on the map, right? Even for
Yes.
face training. So
Yes.
that's great. We
And
have
it's
a lot.
the first ever been
Yeah.
held here. Yes.
Now, do they have to go back every year to get recertified, or is it?
Well, you have to have so many credits each year.
So you
yes.
do have to. It's like a continuing education thing.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, our officers are a member of another group called Central Florida Code Enforcement Association, and so
Okay.
we also have regular meetings and regular trainings. We just did one together for that group as well, and so we get credit for those trainings, and it keeps the officers current.
Right. Well, you know, from time to time, I'll see them in the hallways here, and your office is right down on the second floor. Actually, if you want to come visit the development services team, well, or Tony. What was that?
Well, I was going to say, Lisa, if you want to come down, we'll certify you as a code enforcement
Okay,
officer
well,
too.
because you know what I was going to say, Rose, you must have a badge, right? You have is it?
I have one, but I don't wear it yet. I want to make sure my officers.
Okay,
We're going to
because-
make a big deal about the
Yes.
presentation on the
Okay,
night.
because that is it's sort of intimidating when you see that. Well, it's also a sign of authority, which I
Yes.
think is important for the public, you know. But like I've heard you say, Tony, Rose, if you see our code enforcement officers in the community, give them a wave. Say, I mean, they're there to, you know, to enforce the ordinances, et cetera, but they're also, you know, part of the employee team and your family. They work for you. Say hi. You know, they work hard every day, right? And
Rose has been pushing her team very hard for community engagement, and I think that needs to be rewarded. So if you have listeners who are planning some type of community get together here locally, and they'd like a code enforcement officer to come out and just kind of mesh with the crowd, or even to do something more formal and more informative, we're always we enjoy coming to you, and we'd be happy to do that for you.
yeah, sure. Okay. Well, that's really. Is there anything else that we wanted to add about this whole thing? I mean, I'm so glad that you're here, Rose, because you're busy out in the community
Yes.
all the time, and thanks for bringing Tony on the show. Is there any last words about the Code Academy, or just in general about what you'd like people to do, maybe to, you know, learn more or to get involved and just understand maybe the practice of code enforcement? Or
Well,
that could be a long
we don't know what we
conversation.
don't know. So what I would encourage any community members listening to this, if they're experiencing problems in their community, they want relief, they want help, don't assume that we know the problem exists. Let us know. Call us, talk to us. Our Citizens Academy here that you run, Lisa, is a great opportunity for people to come and get acclimated to what the city does, the infrastructure that's in our community, and what the roles and responsibilities are. So
Right.
if you want to learn more, that's a great way to do it.
And listen, so you mentioned contact us. So how do they reach out? If they don't see a code enforcement in their neighborhood, or, you know, flagging them down or waving it, how would you reach out to the code enforcement community or staff if you need assistance or anything like that? What's the process, please?
I can provide my cell phone number, office number now. My door is always open, always open. I got, with my officers, they to get out their vehicles, not to just ride an area. I want them outside of their vehicles, you know, mingling with the community where they can get to know them. So if you need my number to be broadcast now, I have no problem with it. They can always reach out to me.
Okay, your number, and then the website, right? The city website, sanfordfl.gov. But what's your
My
city
office
number?
number is going to be 407-688-5164. My cell phone number is 407-402-9047.
And thanks, Rose. Rose Covin. She is the code enforcement supervisor for the city of Sanford. Think about that. I mean, a city of over 60,000 people. How many square miles, Tony, do we have?
26 square miles.
26 square miles.
And growing.
And growing, yes. So with a lot of development. So thank you, Rose. But so also you can visit the website, sanfordfl.gov, and there's something called Citizen Serve. We had a podcast episode about that several months back. But there's a way to submit your concerns that way, online,
is.
electronically.
There is.
And then look out for soon, we are having a Sanford mobile app that we'll have another episode about called Sanford Connects, where you can do something right from your phone very easily. And that's coming up, guys. Women, ladies, and gentlemen. But in the meantime, I want to thank you, Tony and Rose, for taking time out of your busy day to stop by the City of Communications office here and share what you do so that we can continually educate the public so they understand the ins and outs of local government. So when they need us, they know where to find us and live their life and with a great quality of life here in the City of Sanford. So thank you again. This is Lisa Holder, Communications Officer for the City of Sanford. Thank you for listening to Sanford Says. We'll catch you next time. You can find this podcast wherever you subscribe to your favorite podcasts and on the city website at sanfordfl.gov. Thanks. Have a great day. Bye now.